Fellas, there are some title fights up and coming in the UFC that I and many other MMA fans are actually excited for. We can't wait for them to go down. And then there's some title fights that I genuinely couldn't care about, and I think most people just want to get it out the way. So I'm going to be going through all 8 men's UFC champions and ranking every single title fight that has been announced, and the ones that haven't been announced I'm going to be guessing and ranking them by least to most exciting. Let me know your thoughts down below. Starting off with the worst title fight in my opinion, Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad. If you tell me you're somewhat interested in this fight, you've got to be capping. This fight is genuinely... I just want to get it out the way, man. Leon versus Belal is one of those fights I just want to get out the way. I want to see Leon versus Shafkat. We want to see Leon versus JDM. Nobody wants to see Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad. It's going to be Leon Edwards doing enough to outstrike Belal Muhammad. Belal Muhammad mixing it up with the takedowns. He's not going to get a takedown. In fact, Leon might actually go for a takedown himself. He's going to go all 5 rounds. It's going to be quite slow paced, the entire fight. And it's going to be one of those title fights that just shouldn't be for 5 rounds. Like, this is one of those fights that you've got 2 fighters that aren't really the most interesting fighters. I'll give it them. You know, they are Leon Edwards is one of the best in the UFC. They're super skilled. They're well-rounded and they're improving all the time. I'm not saying they're bad fighters, but as far as excitement goes, these guys don't fit the criteria for excitement, and I just don't think there's going to be any form of entertaining fight between these 2 guys. So, last place is Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad. You go on Twitter, you search up this fight, every single time this fight gets mentioned, it's going to be people mocking them. So, Edwards versus Belal has to go last place. Then we've got Pantoja versus Steve Erceg. Now, the fight itself, I actually don't think is going to be that bad. You've got a guy who looks pretty much unstoppable in the flyweight division right now in Pantoja, and he seems like he's the new guy in the division. He's got amazing grappling, his judo's amazing as well, and he's got dog in him. And then you've got Steve Erceg, who ranked number 10, which is quite odd to give the guy that's ranked number 10 a title shot, but at the end of the day, he's coming off a great knockout. His boxing's amazing, and he definitely has the capability to knock out Pantoja. So the fight itself is not actually that boring, but it's the fact that I just couldn't really care less who is the champion in the flyweight division. I don't give a shit if it's Brandon Moreno, Brandon Royval, Pantoja, Manel, anyone. I don't care who holds the flyweight belt, because to be completely honest with you, I just don't really have any emotional connection with the flyweight division. Like, for example, the lightweight division, it's a big deal whoever's holding the belt. The heavyweight division, big deal. The middleweight, welterweight division, big meal. Bantamweight division, big deal. I think I just said big meal. Big deal. Flyweight division, no one cares. I don't think anyone cares who holds the belt in the flyweight division, and that's why this headliner of UFC 301 between Pantoja and Erceg is being called a glorified fight night, because even though the fight might be interesting, I just don't think there's any anticipation between these 2 fighting. So Pantoja versus Erceg, I'm going to have to put them down below, lower on down on this list. Then we've got John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. I actually want to see both of these guys fight, just not against each other. I want to see John Jones return. He's one of the greatest of all time. He's had a massive layoff. He's been so inactive in the past few years, with his only fight being a finish against Cyril Gane. And Stipe is one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, who's been out for so long. I think it's been like 2021, where he obviously got knocked out cold against Francis Ngannou. This shouldn't be the title fight in the heavyweight division. You've got John Jones, the heavyweight champion, and instead of defending his heavyweight champion against the interim champion in Tom Aspinall, or someone who actually poses a threat, he's defended his champion against a nearly 40-year-old firefighter whose last fight was a couple years ago against Francis Ngannou, where he got brutally knocked out. This isn't the real heavyweight title fight. The real heavyweight title fight is Curtis Blaydes versus Tom Aspinall. Jones and Stipe, I'm excited to see them come back, just not against each other. And because of that, I'm just going to have to put this low. Like, if John Jones goes out there and finishes Stipe in the first round, which is most likely going to happen, nobody's going to be there like, oh my gosh, Jones was able to finish Stipe, because we all know what's going to happen. So I'm going to have to say that Jones versus Stipe, it's lower down on this list. I'm excited to see them return, just not against each other. Then we've got Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. Now, again, I'm excited to see Dustin Poirier get his title shot. There'll be nothing more cool than watching Dustin Poirier get that undisputed belt wrapped around him after he just brutally slept Islam Makhachev. That would be a sight to see. But I just don't think it's going to happen. I feel like with this fight, it's kind of like I know that the script has been leaked. Islam Makhachev absolutely out-wrestles Dustin Poirier, mauls him, beats him with ground and pound until eventually in the first couple of rounds, gets the submission on Dustin Poirier, and Dustin Poirier's title aspirations are over. That is what I feel like the script is with this fight. It also doesn't help when 2 fights ago, Dustin Poirier was brutally knocked out by Justin Gaethje, and his last win was against the, ranked 12th Benoit Saint Denis. But He deserves a title shot, and there would be nothing more cool to see Dustin Poirier pull off a win over Islam Makhachev. It would be insane, but because I already think I know what's going to happen with Islam Makhachev beating Poirier, and it's not a 50-50 fight, it's the best in the UFC versus a guy that's kind of scrambling for a title shot here. I'm going to have to put it fairly low down on the list. I am excited for it. I don't think it's going to be a boring fight or anything like that, but there's just not extreme amounts of anticipation for this. Then we've got a title fight that hasn't actually been announced, but it's a fight that I'm pretty sure is going to happen next. Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis. Now, obviously, hasn't been announced, but considering we've got about 3 #1 contender fights in the middleweight division, and Adesanya is not a part of any of them, I think it's safe to say that he's probably going to be taking on Dricus du Plessis, and it's rumoured this fight's going to take place in Perth at 305. Yeah, I'm excited for this fight. They've got a rivalry that they need to settle. They've had this big rivalry that's been going on for ages, since UFC 290 practically, and we've never got to see the fight because obviously Adesanya lost to Strickland, Dricus beat him, but now it feels like we're finally going to get the fight, and I can't wait. I feel like if there's a style or there's a fighter that's going to be the fighter to stop Dricus du Plessis, it's going to be Adesanya. A guy as calculated and calm as Adesanya against a guy who's just not the most pretty on the feet, not the most technical in Dricus du Plessis. And I feel like Adesanya is going to be the guy to catch Dricus du Plessis. I mean, Adesanya as a challenger is a mythical fighter as well. But Dricus du Plessis is a machine. He goes in there, whether it's against Strickland, whether he's getting big upsets like Whittaker. He's a machine. He's an absolute brute. He's got great wrestling. He hits hard. He's got a lot of heart as well. And he's an absolute force to be reckoned with. So, Dricus versus Adesanya, fairly close fight. I would probably pick Adesanya to win the fight, but it's still a close fight because Dricus, he seems to go against the odds in every fight. So, I'm excited for this fight. Some people would argue that Adesanya doesn't deserve the title shot, but I still think there's no one else really right now, unless you're going to say Dricus, Strickland. There's not really any big names that can go above Izzy right now. Then we've got Alex Pereira versus Ankalaev. I'm so excited for this fight. The reason I'm excited is because it's a dangerous fight for Alex Pereira. And I feel like it's the first big threat for Pereira. And I'm not saying that Jamal Hill and Yuri weren't threats. They were definitely threats. But this is a threat in the sense that I feel like this isn't going to be... I feel that the odds are going to be a lot closer for this fight, because Pereira in the light heavyweight division so far has looked great. Beating Jan Blachowicz, knocking out Yuri, and knocking out Jamal Hill in the first round at UFC 300. He's had a textbook picture-perfect career in the light heavyweight division, and to be honest, his entire UFC career. And now he's against a guy who I would call a nightmare matchup for Alex Pereira. A striker who's probably the best wrestler right now in the division. And obviously, we know that Alex Pereira's kryptonite's are wrestlers. Ankalaev's dangerous as well. Dangerous in grappling, but more dangerous on the feet, if anything. We just saw him knock out Johnny Walker. And the fact that I think he's going to keep Pereira guessing, he can mix up the grappling with his striking, and he's dangerous everywhere the fight goes. I think it's a really scary fight for Pereira, considering his kryptonite does tend to be grappling. But Pereira's one of the scariest strikers in the UFC. He's already knocked out the best strikers in the light heavyweight division. And I think he's a much more superior striker to Ankalaev on the feet. But like I just said, Ankalaev's got the grappling. There's so many questions that can be answered with this fight, man. You could go on for days about this fight, and I just really want to see it happen. Pereira versus Ankalaev, super excited for this, and it does seem like this is going to be next in the light heavyweight division. Then we've got Sean O'Malley versus Merab. Yeah, this is again another fight between a striker and a grappler that I'm super excited for. First of all, they've got a mini rivalry going on. I know it's not a serious rivalry. They kind of just poke in front of each other, but it's still a way to sell a fight. But the fight itself is so interesting because it's like picture perfect striker versus grappler. The best grappler in the division versus the best striker. Sean O'Malley, he's gone out there and went against the odds by beating PTM with his striking, knocks out Aljamain Sterling, and absolutely dominates Marlon Vera with his striking for 5 rounds straight. Made him look like a punching bag. And then we've got what's his name, Merab, who's had the most unrelenting grappling pace for the past few fights, dominated and destroyed Peter Yan, and then goes out there and absolutely ragdolls Henry Cejudo, made him look like he's never been on a wrestling mat in his life. You've got the best wrestler versus the best striker, and that is what excites me about this fight. Now, Sean O'Malley, he has never faced a grappler as good as Merab. Merab is an absolute brute when it comes to grappling. In fact, Sean O'Malley arguably got out-grappled by Peter Yan, and now he's facing a guy that out-grappled Peter Yan. But again, Merab got caught by Henry Cejudo, and now he's facing a guy that's a way better striker than Henry Cejudo. So it's a dangerous fight in that sense. Super excited. And then the title fight I'm most excited for, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. It's the most 50-50 fight you can get in the UFC right now. You've got Topuria coming off an insane win over Volkanovski, knocking him out. And Volkanovski, he's the guy that beat Holloway 3 times, which is obviously going to be a narrative that you can push on Elite Topuria. And then we've got Max Holloway, who's pretty much cleared the featherweight division. You look at his last few performances, beating Arnold Allen, knocking out Korean Zombie, and then going out there and putting on a performance of a lifetime and a knockout of a lifetime against Justin Gaethje. The anticipation for this fight, the momentum for the two of them is at an all-time high. Two of some of the biggest stars in the UFC. This fight, I think, is going to be a bloody war between two of the best boxers in the UFC, and I'm hyped. Let me know your thoughts on who or what your favourite title fight is and what your least favourite title fight is. But that is my personal list. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this list, and thank you for watching.